The automotive hierarchy is changing. Would it surprise you to learn that in 2021, BMW outsold Ford in the UK according to SMMT figures, and the fourth best-selling car in this country during the year wore a Mercedes-Benz badge. In fact, the first Ford to figure in the top 10 was in 8th place, and it was the small crossover, the Puma. The Focus didn't even get a mention. There was only one Vauxhall in there as well. So back in my day, these premium badges, such as BMW and Mercedes-Benz, well, they were exactly that. They were premium, whereas nowadays, they seem to be becoming more of the norm. So if you want something a bit premium and you want to stand out from the crowd, what do? Well, if you're Hyundai, then what you do is you bring out a standalone brand. And this is it, Genesis. But we've been here before. Back in 2008, there was a Hyundai Genesis, but it was just a Hyundai with the Genesis badge on it. And it didn't really work. Back in 2015, they had another crack at it, this time bringing the car to the UK and Europe. But again, people deferred back to the default BMWs, Audis, Mercedes and Lexus. Well, undeterred, they're back again, but this time Genesis is not a Hyundai model. It is a completely standalone brand with its own model range. And boy, do they stand out. Welcome to another edition of Sneak Peeks. Welcome to the Genesis GV60, and of course, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we get into the video, it is of course time for me to ask you to like the video, subscribe to the AutoEV channel and press the little bell button down below to make sure you receive notification of when our next video goes live. If you're already a supporter of us, thank you ever so much for being one, and if you're not, then please consider doing that, because obviously your help keeps us independent and makes us bring great content like this. Anyway, back to the car. What is Genesis and the GV60? Well, it sits on the eGMP platform, which it shares with its cousins, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6. Two cars that we've already driven and two cars that we rate really, really highly. But of course, this is a relatively unknown brand. Well, you'd think that, but believe it or not, this is actually the 6th model that Genesis has launched in Europe since their inception. And it's the first all-electric one, but it certainly will not be the last as the brand moves more towards electrification. But is it enough to tempt you away from the normal, shall we say, more obvious choices? Would you gamble on a relatively unknown brand? Well, let's take a deeper dive and find out. Well, the first thing you do is you certainly make it stand out. And I think they've achieved that very, very well. Their Chief Creative Officer is Luc Donkervalk. Who, you may ask? Well, if you haven't heard of him, you've certainly seen his past repertoire. The Audi A2, the Skoda Octavia, Lamborghini Murcielago, the Audi RA LMP1 car. Yeah, that's all his. And he has come on board and created something that really stands out and makes it very, very distinctive in what is quite a burgeoning marketplace. But of course, it needs that if it's going to grab your attention, and I think it's very successful at doing so. Let's take the front end, for instance, with this new kind of split headlight design that seems to be a signature of the Genesis brand now, with each individual lamp being visible under these cowls, and I think that looks fantastic. You've got this bluff kind of front end that flows down into sort of V shape with the kind of traditional Genesis style grille, of course, with their internal combustion engine cars. Not that it's needed here, but obviously there is some cooling down at the bottom for the batteries. And you move around the side and you've got these lovely little kind of sharp vents at the side with the kind of body colour infill there. I just think it looks absolutely sensational, and as I say, what is a standout marketplace. And then round the side is where you notice this sort of clamshell bonnet as the shut lines come down onto these wheel arches, and you've got these nice sort of contrasting trims here. Very intricate alloy wheel design, depending obviously on the trim level that you end up going for. Much like other cars that we're seeing, such as the Honda E, there's going to be the option of the digital mirrors as well, which obviously are relayed images onto the interior, which we'll see later. But look at down the side of the car, this bit of the bodywork that comes up and just pinches it down, taking away some of the visual bulk. But it's the window line that I really, really like. It's got what they call the visor graphic, where you've got the blacked out pillars, where the whole thing just wraps around. And then at the back, this chrome strip that comes down into what is essentially like a lightning bolt. Now that's to give you the impression, obviously, of the electrification of the car. But because of the blacked out surround to it, it makes the whole roof like it's floating above the rest of the bodywork. And as I say, I think it's a really standout piece of design. Charge flap here, obviously, as you press it, it'll open up. And then you're back to the rear of the car where you've got, again, the double lamp signatures like they are at the front. Yeah, so as you see, these kind of double lamp signatures here with the body colour infill. Great colour for this one, this new kind of lime colour as well. That really makes the kind of visual aspect of it stand out and contrasts heavily with the dark trim on the car as well. The only downside I would suggest here is you've got this sort of like rear spoiler, which obviously splits the rear screen. Now, whilst there is a rear view camera, obviously we've seen that before in the cars like the Hyundai Ioniq, when you've got the sort of like split screen, it never works brilliantly in terms of rearward visibility. And of course, the usual no rear wiper. And I think that's really the only kind of downside I can certainly see with it. A big bold Genesis badge right across the back, giving statement of intent. On the whole, a really successful design in my opinion, and as I say, a really standout car in the marketplace. Now obviously the marketplace that the car is coming into, this sort of like premium SUV crossover style marketplace that we have seen so many entries into over the last year or so. Practicality is key. And the GV60 is okay. It has a boot space of 432 litres in terms of its rear luggage space. You've also got a little bit of underfloor storage for cables there. The car also comes equipped with a vehicle to load socket as well, but we'll go on to that later in the usability section. The sloping back obviously does impinge a little bit into the rear space, but not massively so. It's okay. It's, as I say, on a par with things like the Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6 in terms of its overall boot space. You've got the split fold rear seat, the 60-40 split, obviously depending if you need it, and then the luggage tonneau across the back as well, obviously to keep everything out of harm's view. But of course, with being a dedicated EV platform like the other two cars that it shares the platform with, there's some front storage as well. Now in the single motor car, with the motor being mounted at the rear, then the front space is a bit bigger at 53 litres, or if you have the all-wheel drive car like this one, then that shrinks down to 20 litres. But it's okay, I mean it's enough to store your cables or, I don't know, your packed lunch or something, it would go fine in there. But yeah, it just gives an extra bit of practicality. The rear seat accommodation is okay. I wouldn't say it's massive. With the seat in my position, as I say, I'm sort of like 5'7", 5'8". I have got enough knee room and just sort of like enough headroom. I think if you're over 6 foot, that would be encroaching on you a little bit, but this car is fitted with the big glass panoramic roof. The only downside I can see is a little bit struggling to get my feet underneath the front seat when it's sort of like in my position. And it feels like my legs are pushed up a little bit, but it's okay. As I say, certainly for sort of like children or smaller adults like me, this is absolutely, it's fine. You're going to be okay with it. What else can I tell you about the rear of it? Well, it's got some nice, quite handy bottle holders in the door. There's some deep door bins as well. Depending on spec, this particular car's got the heated rear seats as well. You've got nice kind of mat pockets in the back there. I've got 2 USB-C charging ports. I've got a massive big access to the rear of the front centre console, and I've got a flip down armrest that gives me more cup holders in there. So storage is good, connectivity is good. Yeah, it's just lacking a little bit of footroom, I would say, but other than that, rear accommodation seems good. Now, the interior of the GV60 is much like the exterior. It will divide opinion, and it is very distinctive and very different to the other cars that it shares its platform with. It's similar in the sense that you've got the single 12.3-inch display in front of you. So everything's controlled through here, whether it's the driver information or the infotainment system, but you'll see that when I turn it on. So that's like the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6. Where it's slightly different is the feeling that you get inside the car. Whereas the Hyundai is very kind of design-led and very kind of, very avant-garde, the Kia feels a little bit sportier, you sit much lower and hunkered down. The impression you get in the Genesis is very much one of luxury, but sustainable luxury. Now, I'll go on to this in a little bit in a second. What you have in front of you is, as I say, your big display here. You've got the slightly inelegant 2-spoke steering wheel. I must admit, I'm not a big fan of this. It feels a bit fat and the spokes are too thick, but there is a lot of buttons on it, which is good because it means you're not completely relying on the infotainment system. But this is really interesting here. This is the one piece that I really do like, and that's the transmission lever. Now, it doesn't look like anything other than what it is. It's a crystal ball that sits there and there's some ambient light underneath that shines through until you switch the car on. and then it springs to life by flipping round, and there is your dial, your rotary dial for your transmission. Really clever, really simple, but I really do like that. In front of it here is the controller for the media system. So although it is a touch screen and you can go into various different things as you see fit, whether you want your navigation up or your EV stats there, tell you about your charging and all the rest of it. You can also use this, so it's like let's say the kind of BMW style iDrive. So again, it's nice you've got that physical control if that is what you prefer, and just press it or turn it depending obviously on what you want. Located down below that, again, similar thing. You've got a touch screen here for the heating and ventilation system, but there are some physical buttons. So although you can go onto it there and press obviously what you want, then as I say, there's some physical buttons to the side there, depending obviously on what you see fit, whether it's the fan speed, which we will turn off, or the temperature control for either side, or the heated screen, or whatever. And then the media buttons down below. So again, you go into media, and then of course you've got your usual suspects. You've got DAB, you've got Bluetooth audio, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So all very good. You've also got good storage in the car. So we've got a couple of big cup holders here, nice big kind of door bins down there. We've got a wireless charging pad for our mobile there. We've got a centre cubby there with some storage, but underneath this floating console is even more storage. And there's a little bit down in there, and there's also some USB-C charging ports there and a 12-volt charger there too. So all good. Now let's go on to that sort of like sustainability that I was talking about. Now Genesis want to, by 2035, be a carbon neutral company. So the leather that's in the car isn't leather, it's, you know, obviously this kind of more kind of, you know, man-made leather, although there is going to be an option to have Napa leather. And there will be various different option packs depending obviously what you as a customer want. You'll be able to specify different things, obviously, say, depending obviously on what you require from the car. So you can really tailor it to yourself. But the whole interior has, as I say, a really nice kind of luxurious feel about it. The driving position is really good. I see the only thing I can really fault with it is I'm just not a big fan of this slightly more bulbous wheel. The wheel itself, as I say, has got some physical buttons on it and shortcuts, so answering your telephone, volume for the radio, cruise control. Column stocks behind are nice and easy to reach. They're easy to get to. You've got the two paddles mounted on the steering wheel as well, obviously for your brake regeneration levels, depending obviously on whether you want to add regen or take it off. In front of you is the driver. You've got the driver display here, which is obviously things like your speedometer. If you're using the cruise control or lane departure, obviously you get the graphics for that, and again you'll be able to change these depending obviously on what you want. Now, what is slightly better, as I say, than the other two cars is the graphics. They're not quite as cut off by the wheel as I found them in the Hyundai, which is quite nice. They just seem to be slightly more inboard and a bit easier to see. So that's a good thing. The other nice thing as well is these mirrors. Well, they're good and bad. Now, these kind of virtual mirrors I think are going to be an option. And we've got a kind of love it and hate it relationship with these depending on the car. We don't like them on the Audi e-trons because they're in the wrong position. We like them on the Honda E, however, because they're where you expect to find the mirror. And it's the same here in the Genesis. They're exactly where you expect to find the mirror. And the clarity of them is exceptional. The only bit I don't like is your eyes, first of all, drawn towards the pods that actually are on the outside of the car, because they're located where the mirror should be, whereas on the Honda E, they're further down the door. So like the Audi, that's the first thing that catches your eye before you move to here. But they are in a better position than the Audis, and as I say, the clarity of them is very, very good, and the size of them is ideal. So yeah, as I say, love it and hate it in both equal measure, I would suggest. Door controls, again, nice and easy to use, exactly what you'd expect. You've got mirror controls here, windows, and then you've got obviously positioning for your memory seats here. So the sustainability of it is an added benefit. Very luxurious feeling. There's some slightly cheaper plastics around about in the area, but on the whole the build is very, very good. The equipment levels are sure to be high, and the whole design ambience of the car is, well, yeah, well done Genesis. It's really, really nice interior, this. Now, all GV60s coming to the UK are going to be equipped with the 77 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery. And according to WLTP figures, that will give a range of around about 321 miles on the single motor car. The mid-spec dual motor car with the slightly lower performance, that's going to drop the figure down to about 292 miles. And if it's the all-wheel drive performance model, the highest spec you can get, then that range is going to come in just below that, around about 289 miles. Now, the car will also take charging speeds up to 350 kilowatts, which is really impressive. And if you can find a charger capable of delivering that level of speed, then you can go from the benchmark 10 to 80% in just 18 minutes. If it's the more likely 50 kilowatt charger that you stumble across, then that time is going to go to 73 minutes, so just over an hour. If it's from your 7 kilowatt home wall box, then charging overnight in just over 7 hours. And the car also comes equipped with a vehicle to load socket as well. So like the Hyundai and like the Kia and some of the other cars we're seeing, where you're able to actually use the power from the car, from the battery, to charge an outside source as well. Now, as I say, there's going to be 3 power outputs available in the GV60 when it comes to the UK. There's a single motor car with 228 brake horsepower, a dual motor all-wheel drive car with 315 brake horsepower, and a dual motor all-wheel drive performance model with 483 brake horsepower, which is quite staggering, to be honest with you, and probably enough to see the car sprint from 0 to 60 in just over 4 seconds. But even a single motor car should provide fairly brisk performance, as we've experienced with Hyundai and Kias before. 0 to 60 times around about 7 seconds, which is, as I say, brisk for a family car. But of course, in terms of how the car handles, well, we're going to have to wait till we subject it to the full AutoEV road test to find that out. But given the all-wheel drive nature of the vehicles we've experienced in the past, such as the Ioniq 5 and the EV6, we know the grip levels are very high. The car also comes equipped with an electronic limited slip differential in the top guys as well, which should give even more sure-footed on the road. Now, final prices and specifications again have yet to be fully finalised before it comes into the UK during 2022. But it's going to have to remain fairly competitive because, let's be honest, Genesis is still a fairly unknown brand. And like I said right at the start, people tend to be lured to more towards what they know in terms of BMW, Audi and Mercedes. But given, I think, the fact that younger people who are starting to buy EVs are slightly less concerned about brands and heritage and the history of those brands, maybe, just maybe, this fact that it's such a standout car in terms of its styling and high performance, this is going to give them a good run for their money. Which brings me neatly onto the competition for the GV60, because no doubt if you're looking at this, then you are going to be considering it possibly against its compatriots from fellow brands, such as the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6, our car of the year back in 2021. But as I say, this marketplace is bursting with talent. Of course, you've got the likes of the Audi Q4 e-tron, the Skoda Enyaq and the Volkswagen ID4, and you may look at them and say, well, they're much more practical and slightly less stylish. But of course, remember that Volkswagen have now showed the ID5, the coupe version of the ID4. You've also got the Q4 e-tron Sportback, its coupe version, and the Skoda Enyaq coupe, which we've just seen and been announced. So there is quite a few cars out there in terms of its style. I also remember you've got the Ford Mustang Mach-E and Volvo's C40, its sort of like coupe-like SUV all-electric one. So it's going to have quite a fight on its hands. Now, obviously, as I say, our final verdict on the new Genesis GV60 is going to have to wait until we're able to subject it to the full AutoEV road test. But given the fact that we're such big fans of the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6, it may be a fairly safe assumption to say that it's probably not going to disappoint too much. But is it enough to persuade you to look away from those other premium brands that are more well known and, as I say, traditional, have that sort of, well, yeah, more tradition towards them? Well, I think for younger buyers, then yes. I think those who look more towards technology, connectivity and good design and are less bothered by heritage and history, then it's certainly off to a very, very good start, especially from what we've seen today. Thank you once again for watching AutoEV. As always, please remember to like the videos, subscribe to the AutoEV channel, and give us a thumbs up, and make sure you press that little bell button down below to receive notification of when our next video goes live. Remember, we're on all other social media channels such as Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter, so go and give us a like there as well. And remember, if you want even more content from us, then have a look through our back catalogue of motoring review library on the AutoEV YouTube channel. Thank you once again. We'll see you soon. So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded.